We got a brilliant question here on Reddit, of all places. What do they mean by insult the viewer's intelligence in the woke movies? I watched the first two J.J. Abrams Star Trek and I liked it. Not enough to warrant an immediate review, but I watched it. For the life of me, I don't know which scenes there insults my intelligence. I'm not a bright guy, quite slow and dense. I attribute that to me not getting the intellectual capacity to appreciate The Godfather or Star Wars, but I accept that they are not for me. I am aware that there are people out there who prefer media that makes them think, gives out ideas that they could use for themselves or others. I acknowledge the existence of those individuals. I just can't grasp my head around which movies make people feel stupid. Humbly ask if some of you could give me a digital hand, and I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about Star Trek because it's been a while. Haven't seen those movies, but I can talk about other woke movies and tell you how exactly they insult the viewer's intelligence. It usually starts off with the marketing. Like, for example, they will purposefully cast people of color in the role of white people, especially in historical movies, this happens. And if you complain about it or if you criticize the movie, they will say it's because you're a racist. So imagine if in an alternate universe, you'd have a movie that talks about Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, and they cast Tom Hanks as Martin Luther King. Now, when people complain and they're like, hey, hold on, like that's kind of weird, isn't it? They would be called a racist. Or imagine another movie where they talk about Shaka Zulu, and they have a couple of white people there, and they're all dressed in their tribal garments, and everyone acts like they've always been there, and there's no problem. You know, it's immersion breaking, that's the main issue. Like, it makes you think that the reason they're doing this is political, and usually the people who make these movies, they outright say that they're doing this to spite the trolls. Like, this is on their agenda. They are creating art so that some people will hate it. It's like their FU to the audience. It's very bizarre. So that is the one thing. It's like insulting your intelligence by calling you racist when they usually do like a historical movie, a historical adaptation or something like that, and they just palette swap a couple of the characters at any type of criticism. It's definitely because you're a racist. So that's number one. Number two, this happens a lot, usually because woke people are putting the message first. They're focused more on activism than the actual story. But it's when the story has inconsistencies, like when the plot doesn't make sense. Like in Game of Thrones, for example, they considered it a big deal if someone was a bastard. Your entire legitimacy, your claim was being put into question. In fact, it was such a big deal that when Ramsay fights Jon Snow, they call it the Battle of the Bastards. Because, like, people were bewildered by the fact that bastards are now in control of armies. So, the reason for this is that we're looking at a very medieval setting. It's a very medieval story where the people are rooted in their traditions and whatnot. And because the authors want to make it progressive, all of a sudden you have all the major players become women. So you have Sansa Stark controlling the Northern armies. You have Daenerys having her invasion force. You got Cersei controlling the Lannister armies. There was like that little child controlling Bear Island. And Arya Stark, who's now capable of doing ninjutsu and stuff. And like, it's fine. But, like, no one is questioning this. No one is pointing it out. I mean, we're talking about a very medieval society, and everyone all of a sudden is progressive and accepting of what's happening, right? I mean, if that's the case, how are women oppressed when literally all the armies of the Western kingdoms were controlled by women? Right? So it's insulting your intelligence. It's the idea that you have to play along. You have to pretend that you don't see these things, which are immersion breaking. Because you already established in the first seasons that women were oppressed because it's a medieval society, very patriarchal, very religious. And all of a sudden, all these women are in command. Why? Because the authors want it to be progressive. They put the message in front of the story. The story doesn't matter. It needs to take a back seat. All that's important is the message. And the message is that, yes, we can if you're a woman, blah, blah, blah. But like you take away from what made the show interesting. It was a dark fantasy, and it was interestingly dark because it was a page from our history, and it's good that we moved away from that. But all right, so that's another thing. And finally, like another one that insults your intelligence happens a lot more in cartoons and video games. But if you look at He-Man, you have the progressive woke woman. So the progressive woke woman is usually a woman that's androgynous. So she looks like a man. She's got like broad shoulders. She's got a chin that makes me jealous. Like she can cut diamonds with her chin. She's very muscular, well built. She's capable of beating like 5 or 6 men. She's got like the mental illness haircut. So that is the woke woman. And on top of that, she's got a very toxic personality. Usually, like, she's got issues. She's very emotional. She screams at people. She doesn't want to be polite because that's not who she is. You have to accept her for who she is. And she curses nonstop. And then you look at the male character, the male interest, who is very charismatic, is rich, is beautiful. Like, he can have any girl in the world, but he chooses that particular woman. And you get to see this in Wheel of Time. You get to see this with She-Ra. You get to see this with many other adaptations. But it just makes absolutely no sense. Dying Light 2, another example. It's like, why would these men that can have any women they want go for this particular one? Which, you know, looks aside. Like, let's say they don't care about looks. Let's say that, you know, like, maybe they're into that. But her personality is rotten. Her personality is toxic. They're very selfish. They're vain. They're self-centered. Invincible, another example. Right? Like his girlfriend cares more about the fact that he doesn't have time to spend with her because he's out there rescuing people and saving lives. Like, she's so selfish. She's so self-centered. So it's insulting your intelligence because you know in real life, like, that would never happen. A person that's this mean, a person that's this evil and this selfish would have difficulty finding human companionship. Like, no one wants to stand around people that are this toxic and radioactive. Like the woke woman, the progressive woman that Hollywood is pushing on us. Makes absolutely no sense. So, insulting the viewer intelligence is immersion breaking. That's what it is. Instead of being immersed by the story, instead of trying to think how cool the story is, I'm rolling my eyes and like, oh God, they did this because of politics, didn't they? Like, this is not something that fits in the movie, but the author has to have it because corporate wants it. So that's what I consider by assaulting the viewer's intelligence. But let me know what you guys think, and if you have a different thought, please put it down in the comments section and I'll take a look at it. If you manage to change my mind, I'll even make a video with your comment. So, see you guys there. Take care.